In 330 BC, a drunken feast in a captured palace ended with a torch. The Macedonian army had just entered Persepolis, the ceremonial heart of the Persian Empire. The empire that, for 150 years, had been the largest power in human history. From the Indus River to the Aegean Sea, from Egypt to the steppes of Central Asia. And now a 25-year-old named Alexander stands in the middle of the throne hall, a torch in his hand. Within hours, the greatest palace complex of the ancient world will be nothing but charred columns. But before it burns, look at it closely. Persepolis was not an ordinary city. It was not a capital. The Persian Empire had 3 capitals, and none of them was here. It was not a fortress. Persepolis had almost no walls. Persepolis was a stage. Once a year, on the spring equinox, the entire empire came here. 23 nations, each in its own dress, each carrying its own gift. And the walls of this city carved that procession into stone, forever. 23 nations, and not a single battle scene, not one slain enemy, not one image of war. An empire built by conquest chose to picture itself as a brotherhood of nations. It was the most ambitious performance in history, and it ran for 200 years, until one man with a torch burned the set down. These are the streets of Persepolis. To understand Persepolis, begin with an empty plain, southwestern Iran. The region the Persians called Parsa, the root of the Greek word Persia. The wide, marv-dashed plain, ringed by mountains. At the foot of one of them, a mountain they called the Mountain of Mercy. In 518 BC, a man who already had everything came here. Darius I, King of Kings, ruler of the Achaemenid Empire, the first true world empire. Cyrus the Great had founded it a couple of decades earlier, but it was Darius who turned conquered land into a working machine. He divided the empire into provinces, satrapies. He built the Royal Road, 2,500 kilometers of paved highway. He created a relay postal service. He introduced a single gold coin, the daric. Darius already had capitals: Susa, the administrative center; Ecbatana, the summer residence; Babylon, the oldest city in the world, now under his rule. He did not need another city. And yet, he began to build Persepolis. He ordered a colossal terrace cut from the rock and raised by hand. A platform larger than 12 football fields, lifted 15 meters above the plain. On it would stand palaces, halls, staircases, gates. This was not built to rule from, it was built to become to. At that same moment, the world looked different. Rome was a small republic almost no one had heard of. Athens had just thrown back a Persian invasion and was entering its golden age. In India, the life of the Buddha was drawing to a close. In China, Confucius was teaching. And on the marv-dashed plain, a terrace was rising. A terrace on which the largest empire on earth was preparing to show itself to itself. There are no streets in Persepolis in the ordinary sense. There are no residential quarters with houses, shops, crossroads. There is no crowd of townspeople going about their day. For most of the year, this terrace stands almost empty. The streets of Persepolis are processional routes, the roads by which the world enters the city. Enter the way a guest of the empire entered. You climb a vast double staircase. Its steps were made deliberately low and shallow, so that a rider could ascend without dismounting, in full dignity. At the top, the gate of all nations receives you. It is guarded by colossal stone bulls with human faces and wings. Above the gate, an inscription of King Xerxes in 3 languages. I built this gateway. Much that is beautiful is in this parsa. Beyond the gate, the Ecbatana opens, the great audience hall. 72 columns, each one 20 meters tall. Cedar carried from Lebanon, stone cut from the mountain. A hall beneath whose roof thousands of people could stand. And along the staircases of the Ecbatana runs the thing the whole city was built for: stone relief. A procession of 23 nations: Medes, Elamites, Babylonians, Lydians, Armenians, Bactrians, Indians, Ethiopians, Arabs, each in its own dress with the gift of its own land. A Bactrian leading a camel, a Lydian carrying gold vessels, an Indian with a basket of gold dust, an Armenian with a horse. And this stone was not grey. Persepolis was painted: red ochre, blue lapis, gold, green. A guest climbed the staircase into a city blazing with colour. So where did the people live? Below the terrace, on the plain, stood the real city. Settlements of builders, craftsmen, scribes, cooks, musicians. Thousands of people who made and served this stage. And it was there, in the dust below the terrace, that archaeologists found the thing that told the truth about Persepolis. In the 1930s, American archaeologists were excavating the edge of the Persepolis terrace, and they found an archive. Tens of thousands of clay tablets covered in cuneiform writing in the Elamite language. These were not royal chronicles, not prayers, not hymns. They were accounts, receipts, payrolls, records of who received how much and for what. And these tablets destroyed the oldest myth about Persepolis: the myth that it was built by slaves. The tablets say otherwise. The builders of Persepolis were paid in silver and in rations: grain, wine, beer, meat. They were paid for their work. They were men, women, and children. Dozens of nations: Persians, Elamites, Babylonians, Greeks, Egyptians, counted by name, receiving their due. And among these tablets are records that make a room go quiet. Women received wages on the same terms as men, and women who had recently given birth received an additional ration, a bonus for the birth. 2,500 years ago, maternity pay. That is the first secret of Persepolis. Here is the second. Go back to the reliefs. Walk along every wall, along every staircase. Look at every scene. Compare it to Assyria, the neighboring empire, whose palaces are covered with images of executions, sieges, burning cities, the bodies of beaten enemies. Assyria took pride in terror. In Persepolis, there is nothing of the kind. No executions, no captives, no battles. Only nations walking with gifts. Only the king on his throne. Only a lion and a bull, an ancient sign many connect with the equinox. An empire that conquered half the world by the sword never once depicted the sword. It was a deliberate choice, the first great work of image-making in history. Persepolis was built so that once a year, at the festival of Nowruz, the Persian New Year, the spring equinox, it could show the empire not as a conquest, but as a willing brotherhood of nations bringing gifts to their king. The city was not a building. The city was a message. The performance ended in 330 BC. A year earlier, at Gaugamela, the army of Alexander of Macedon shattered the forces of the Persian king Darius III. An empire that had stood for 200 years collapsed in a single battle. Alexander marched east, and in the winter of 330, he entered Persepolis. First, he gave the city to his soldiers to plunder. The treasury of Persepolis, gold and silver that had been accumulating for 200 years, was carried away. According to ancient writers, it took thousands of pack animals to move the haul. And then there was a feast. Greek and Roman historians tell the same story. At the feast, amid the wine, a woman rose, an Athenian named Thais. And she reminded everyone, 150 years ago, the Persian king Xerxes had burned Athens. He had burned the Acropolis. So let it be, she said, that a woman's hand finish what the generals could not. Let Persepolis burn. And Alexander took a torch. Historians still argue. Was it a cold political calculation, a symbol of the end of the Persian Empire, or a drunken impulse Alexander later regretted? The ancient sources disagree, but the result was the same. The cedar roofs caught instantly. The fire ran along the columns, the beams, the painted reliefs. A terrace built over decades burned in a single night. And there was one bitter irony to this fire. The clay tablets, those same receipts, payrolls, records of wages, lay in storerooms below the terrace. The fire should have destroyed them. Instead, the heat baked the raw clay and turned it into ceramic. The fire that destroyed Persepolis preserved its accounting for more than 2,000 years. After the fire, Persepolis was not rebuilt. The terrace remained standing, charred, open to the sky. The city was slowly buried by dust. Within a few centuries, the people living nearby no longer remembered what it had been. They called the ruins Takht-i-Jamshid, the throne of Jamshid, a legendary king from myth. The name Persepolis was forgotten. The city itself was forgotten. But the idea did not burn. Alexander, who destroyed the Persian Empire, adopted its design. He kept Persian governors. He took on Persian court ceremony. The machine that Darius built, satrapies, roads, the postal service, a single coinage, a multi-ethnic administration, was inherited by everyone who came after: the Seleucids, the Parthians, the Sasanians, and through them, Rome. The idea of a multi-ethnic empire that governs dozens of nations without erasing them, that idea outlived the building in which it was invented. And the image of 23 nations climbing a staircase with gifts, proved more durable than stone. It was the first attempt in history to answer a question humanity still has not resolved: whether an empire can be not a cage, but a home for many nations at once. In the 1930s, archaeologists returned to the terrace. They read the fire-baked tablets. They reconstructed, from traces of paint, the lost colors of the reliefs. The forgotten city was given back its name. Today, Persepolis is a World Heritage Site. 13 columns of the Ecbatana still stand on the terrace. They hold up a sky that no longer has a roof. These were the streets of Persepolis, the roads down which, once a year, the whole world came. And one night, a man walked down them with a torch, and the world left.